Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. This is going to be a short video on Baldurs Gate 3, which is still very popular today, and we are going to talk about, for players old and new, some of the stats and how they interact with each other. For anybody out there who's basically looking to get a better understanding of how things work. Now, going right back to basics, I'm going to start by saying that Baldurs Gate 3 is a dice rolling game. That is, everything that you do is based on a dice roll. Now these range from what is a D4, simply meaning a four-sided dice, all the way up to a D20. Now with that said, let's look at the basic stats for every single character. As you can see from my screen in front of you, we have from one of my campaigns the 4 character screens in front of you. We're just going to focus in on one of them for this explanation. So I'm going to start with the player on the left, the paladin. And as you can see, we have 6 main stats. Starting from the left, as you hover over them, they will tell you what they're used for. Now you do have to bear in mind when you go to character creation, depending on the class you choose, will make different stats more or less important. So, for a paladin, as you can see here, I have a star above strength. That is indicating that strength is what is generally believed to be the most important stat for a paladin. Now, once you've got a very great understanding, you can kind of play around with a few things. But generally, if it's got a star next to it showing it's your main stat, don't forget to focus on that one maybe a little bit more than some of the others. Now, looking at the different stats, we have strength. And as you can see, as it says in most RPG games, this is muscle and physical power. And it affects your effectiveness with melee weapons. There is a small caveat to that, but I'm not going to go too deep into combat in this video. Also determines how far you can jump and how much you can carry. Now, jumping over gaps is an exploration part of the game, and how much you can carry obviously just means it's more or less convenient when you're adventuring and picking up loot. And dexterity. This affects your effectiveness with ranged weapons. Everybody can carry both physical and ranged weapons. And as it says, finesse weapons. Again, we're not going to go into this at this point. We will do so in a later video. Also affects your initiative and armor class. What this basically means, your initiative is how fast you act whenever you get into combat, and your armor class is your defense. Constitution, this in essence just affects your hit points. Intelligence, as you can see, it is the main thing for spellcasting for wizards. Wisdom is the main thing for spellcasters for clerics, druids, and rangers. And charisma is the main thing for spellcasting for paladins, bards, sorcerers, and warlocks. It also says that it influences traders' price, but to be honest with you, I wouldn't really worry about that in any form of way or shape. It's honestly not that important in my personal opinion. And so with these stats, one very important thing to note is, first off, no matter how you progress through the game from level 1 up to level 12, which is the maximum in Baldurs Gate 3, the stats and how they affect things do not change. This is one of the things that I actually do love about this game, based on, of course, Dungeons and Dragons, is the fact that as you level up, you don't need to start worrying about having, in essence, increasing numbers and diminishing returns and all these other factors that, you know, having an armor rating of 10 at level 1 is good, but having an armor rating of 10 at level 12, it means that you've actually got no armor. None of these kind of stats, the base stats, do the exact same thing at level 1 that they do at level 12. Now, obviously at level 12 you do want slightly higher stats because you'll face horrible and meaner monsters, but the effects they have on you and your character are exactly the same throughout the whole game. Also, that being said, the base number for any of these 6 main stats is 10. And by that I mean, if you have a stat of 10, like I do here for Wisdom, you will have a +0 to things involving wisdom. Now, of course, there are other modifiers, which I'm going to touch on shortly, but the base influence from this number as a pure number is a 0 at 10. It then increases by 1 for every 2 points you put in the skill. For instance, if we look at my strength, that's on 17. So that has a +3. That's because at 12 you'll get a +1, at 14 a +2, at 16 a +3, and if I can manage to increase my strength to an 18, I will get +4. There are no half numbers in Dungeons & Dragons, and so therefore Baldur's Gate 3. And so the biggest thing that these influence on the whole and large, not potentially the most important, especially if you are playing a combat-focused character, but one of the biggest things they do affect are your skill checks. We come across here to the character pane. You can see that all of them are broken down depending on their main stats, so strength, dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, charisma. As you can see, there is nothing for constitution in terms of a skill check. And you can also see right at the top here, we have this thing called proficiency bonus. Now, how this works is basically, as you can see here, as we use athletics as an example, I have a +3 to my strength. That means any athletics checks I do will get a +3, but you can also see here we've got a star. That means, for the character I have gone and built, I am proficient in athletics, which means I also get my proficiency bonus. So I get the +3 from strength, the +2 from my proficiency, so as you can see here, giving me a +5. Now, there will, of course, be other things as you go through the game that will influence these numbers. For instance, as you can see here with my sleight of hand, I get a +2, but I've only got a +1 to my dexterity. This will be due to something that I have equipped or a feature or skill that I have picked up whilst playing the game. Now, there are lots and lots of these, and so yes, by the end of the game, this can get very complex. But if you keep coming back to basics to figure out how stuff affects the actions and the different mechanics that you will use during the game, you can hopefully use it to decide what you are going to be good at or not. Now, as you can see here, I have a -1 to intelligence. Now, this is the flip side, as I said, because 10 is the base number. So for every 2 below 10 that you have for one of your key stats, as you can see from the pop-up here, I only have an intelligence of 8. You will then go and get a minus to anything involving that main stat. So anything involving intelligence, I will naturally start at a -1 of. So as you can see here, there are 5 skill checks involving intelligence, and they all start on a -1. But of course, as you can see, 2 of them have this wonderful star because I am proficient in them. So -1 plus 2 gives me an overall of +1 for the religion and history stat. But the other 3, as you can see, I'm at a grand old -1. And then as you can see going down, it carries all the way through for my charisma and wisdom checks. Now, just a quick note, the proficiency bonus does slightly increase as you go through the game. When you reach level 5, and then when you reach level 9, it will increase by 1. So at level 5, it will go up to a +3, and at level 9, it will go up to a +4. It won't go any higher than this. It does in normal Dungeons & Dragons because you can go up to level of 20, but for this game, you can only go up to level of 12, and so the next proficiency bonus would happen at level 13, which is not built into the game. Now, to actually talk about some of these stats and what all these +5s and -1s actually mean. The way it works is when you go to do a skill check, you will roll a D20. That's a 20-sided die. So if I go to do an athletics check, I will roll my D20, and whatever number I get, I will then go and add +5 to it, plus or minus any other modifiers you have for your character. purely from my statistics, I get a +5. Like I said, there could be other things that affect it. And so that basically means that although I'm rolling a d20, so in essence I can get a 1 to 20, because of my +5, I can actually get a 6 to 25. So my chances of beating an athletics skill check has exponentially increased, because anything from a 1 to 6 I automatically pass. On the flip side, if I had a +0, for instance if I went to do any wisdom checks, and I happened to come across a very difficult wisdom check, and the pass mark was say a 22, it would be impossible for me, because the maximum I can roll is a 20 without further modifiers. There is, however, just one small caveat on this. When rolling a d20 die on a skill check, you must be aware that maybe you will manage to get extremely lucky or extremely unlucky. For if you roll a 1, it is an automatic failure. It is called a critical fail. And if you roll a 20, it is an automatic pass, because it is classed as a critical success. So what this means is that if you roll a 1 on, say, a skill check of a 3, and you've got, say, like myself with athletics, you technically should get a 6. But because you rolled a 1, your modifiers are not counted, and it is simply a critical failure, and you will fail anyway. On the other hand, like the wisdom scenario I gave, if you roll a natural 20, that is a 20 before any modifiers, and even if the skill check is a 25, you will automatically succeed. So even though you didn't reach the number required, because you rolled that magical, what's called a natural 20, that's a 20 on the die without modifiers, you get an automatic pass, classed as a critical success. And so with that, we have looked at the base stats and how they then can go on to affect other things, and the skill checks, which make up a very large part of the game. Now, what each skill is used for and how useful they are, I may put in a future video. If you'd like to see that, let me know, and I can go through all of these skills, and then of course potentially talk about the other things that these dice influence, and so how important they are going to be. But for now, that is the end of the first video in this little series of explanation videos for Baldurs Gate 3. I hope you'll find it useful, and until next time, as per always, I hope that you stay safe, happy, and healthy.